And at first it was very, very crude, but as we continued shooting it, that became more and more, vastly more sophisticated as each day passed. So, but towards the end, you know, you get this thing where you start having the luxury of thinking, because the actors have got their act together more or less, and you can start thinking about camera choreographies. Really, it just started to scratch the surface with the bit where all the cameras mush into a kind of close-ups on the eyes. One camera doesn't quite make it. And the cameras start, because they're in on every meeting, the same as the actors, they're perfectly aware for the first time in their careers shooting film of actually what the fuck they're shooting. Not just this scene out of sequence and then you hand it over and the editor then makes some kind of like huge artistic decision about what he's going to do with your work. They were entirely responsible. And the amazing thing was everybody took the responsibility to heart and actually became totally responsible for delivering stuff, you know. That took a couple of versions before it really sunk in, but they did. Yeah, sure.
Did you make a conscious decision to leave the cameras off image? Because there's one scene where I actually see another camera walking.
Did you?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But you consciously left them out of the image themselves?
The cameras?
Yes.
Yeah, because in takes 1 and 2, you know, there was this panic as you tried to avoid another camera. And so there's almost like you're going to go one way or the other. You're either going to be totally open about it, because everyone knows this is being filmed by cameras. And I looked at it and thought about it, and I thought, it's one piece of information too, and it's going to take away from the suspension of disbelief, which, tenuous though it is, I wouldn't mind if we sort of clung onto an element of that, you know. So then all the cameras started working on quite cool sort of dance moves actually, so they could kind of like, they'd say, well, I need to stay here, and I guess you need to pan across that way. So let's motivate something that's going to take the camera under there or around there. So, and it was just like a lot of dancing actually on that respect.
I was just going to say that Jean's performance was really different.
Yeah.
From the last one. I really felt like she pulled it out.
Yeah.
In the end.
Well, there's a lot to be said for tension, you know, when you kind of go, this is the last take, you know, there ain't no more after this, they're pulling the plug, and, you know, this is it. And everybody, because like, it became so theatrical, like opening night, you know, like everything was a lead up to that, even though I kept telling everybody that it wasn't, you know. And then the other big radical difference, which my group is aware of, but you're not, the other group, is that every single other take that we looked at, the therapist was played by a completely different actress who had a TV show, so she couldn't shoot with me in the afternoon. So she brought a dep in, very, very highly competent one. But her name is Laurie Metcalf, and she's, you know, I think, you know, one of the finest actors I've ever worked with in my life. And it kind of broke my heart that the version we released did not have her in it. But it was always clear. She said, you know, it's pot luck. I can do the mornings, but I can't do the afternoons. And in the second week, we were shooting twice a day, so version 15 was without her. But having seen the other 3 versions, it's radically different, the therapy sessions, with a completely different actress, you know.
Sorry, I have a question. Did you ever try to put the screens instead of square, putting this like a gallery into it?
Well, like the diagram she has, the first time we did it, I had 4 monitors that laid out this, and in my head was the idea that we'd go cinemascope with the 4 screens. And it wasn't very satisfying. And you realized also, although it looked kind of sexy and cinematic,
right,
there's actually many, many more possibilities if you make the quad, because you can get this, you know, cross these looks from actors. They started to look down because they knew when they were acting that, you know, come the afternoon, the other image would be down there. So it was interesting. They did start to act in their memory and their awareness of what it was going to look like.
You mentioned in another project you're working right now. Are you going to do this type of format, but with precise blacking and kind of theater?
Yeah, I showed one today. It was an installation piece that's just been on in London with an Italian photographer called Massimo Vitali, and it's 4 screens, but it's one actress playing 4 characters. And it really is more like a dance piece in the sense that she, despite being all those different characters, there are certain moments of synchronization, absolute synchronization, and there's also a piece of music that they, 4 characters, almost dance to in very strict time. So that was an attempt to go in another direction with it, but still using that. I'm kind of hooked on the multi-screen thing. I like it, and I would like to do a more commercial film, like a really intense thriller, using, if not all the way through. I mean, the other thing, I made a film after this called Hotel, and my intention was to shoot that entire film like this, but in 10-minute takes, giving the possibility of like cutting to a month later or something like that, a different time, so not having to stay 95 minutes real time. And I turned up with that very, deliberate intention of like, I've created this thing, and this is now my thing, and after a week I just thought, this is so boring, Actually, this scene would be much better on one camera. Why the hell are we sticking to, it's not dogma films, so we can abandon that idea. So that film is sometimes 1 screen, sometimes 2, sometimes widescreen, sometimes just 1 little screen in the middle. And that intrigued me too, because we've become so hooked on like a format is a format, and people are very snobbish about widescreen stuff, and it's a little bit silly, the whole debate. And I think if you change the frame, it also has the effect of making the audience look at, like some scenes are cinematic and work really well on a wide screen. Others are quite boxy and work quite well there. And you think about photography, no one shoots film in portrait format. And I found I've started doing that a lot, just turning the camera sideways. And that's quite refreshing. And if you stick a couple of those together, then you make a box, and that works quite well. For dance pieces, it's great.
Is anybody else trying to do this?
I've seen a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of people are using multi-screens, and I think they were before too. I mean, there are lots of examples of split-screen stuff, and even in mainstream filmmaking, and right back to like Piscator in the 20s, we were doing that, and the Napoleon film. So I mean, I stake no claim, other than real time and this, whatever this is,
I'm wondering if you could just take us back, because I think it was in Minneapolis in '99, and there was so much happening in Italy, right? 99, 2000, we have Requiem for a Dream, Magnolia, Time Code, a bunch of what's the filmmaker, looking back on that, sort of, let's say 99 to 2001, just sort of what happened? Something went a little wonderfully.
Maybe it was the millennium, I don't know.
Do you think it was as simple as that? I mean,
Well, people do get very worked up about it, and like, it's the new world and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. Except for 9/11, they decided to go a year later, I guess, or something.
but it was like one thing after another. Dancer in the Dark, Magnolia, Requiem for a Dream,
Maybe
Time Code.
really on the shirt tails of Dogma, because I have mixed feelings about some of the films. I think are stupendously wonderful. Some are okay, and the dogmatic aspect of Dogma, which I believe was a joke in the first place, that other people took too seriously, and they decided to go along with it or something like that. But it did inspire a kind of a sort of some kind of a new energy about filmmaking that seemed quite infectious, I think, at that point. I think it's really hot in here. I think we should go and drink and smoke some. Thank you.